Last Pint Productions presents the New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content, including feminism, Mexican situations, and women named Sigourney. Listener discretion is advised.
You see, they're just pissing on us without even the courtesy of calling it rain. I'm going to Selfridge.
No, Grace.
No, man, this is such bullshit.
You think they asked Emil if he would waste his time on nudie shots? No, they respected the filmmaker.
There is a thing called being too healthy. That's what killed Bruce Lee.
Really? Where'd you read that? The Weekly World Dum Dum?
Say it! Say you like my hat!
You're not wearing a hat!
Say it!
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Hey, and welcome to the New Way podcast. Almost made that rhyme work. Almost made it sort of great. This is, of course...
According to Matt Shanks, host Matt Shanks'
up.
radio voice, you're listening to 101.3 The Bear.
Shut up, Ben.
Bringing you Des Moines' best hard rock.
That's look. What's the name of the two guys on Parks and Rec that do the? It's something in the douche. Oh, douche and the turd. Douche and the turd.
Sounds about right.
Good stuff. Welcome to the New Way, where we dissect pop culture, so you don't have to. I'm liking that. I think Nick was kind of not on board with that byline for us, but I kind of like that as our what we do, because it's really all we do is we have lengthy conversations about stuff that you might be thinking, but you're probably not going to have a conversation about, unless, of course, you call into our show, which we need to get more callers in for the show for sure.
If you're one of us, or if you're one of us in the terms of you're like us, yes, exactly. We accept you. We accept you. One of us. So yes, please call in. Arrange with us ahead of time to call in.
We don't run this live or even necessarily exactly released on a proper schedule. So when we say call in, that means shoot us a text message, say, hey, I've got something I want to
and then expect
get off my chest,
and then expect to have 5 minutes advance notice, and we'll be like,
and by call in it means we will call you. You will not call. Don't call us. We'll call you. That's the way it works at the New Way podcast. We're excited to be back. We're off for a week for a little bit of travel in 4th of July shenanigans. Ben, you were in the great state of Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken.
It's true.
How was it?
It was nice. I was. It's actually interesting because we flew into Connecticut, and on the drive back to Connecticut, we drove through upstate New York because that was the fastest way to go. So yeah, it was a quick 3-state trip for a few days, but it was nice. It's in the middle of nowhere. Climbed a mountain.
There you go.
Did some shit. Yeah.
Climb, as they say in that musical, climb every mountain.
Yes.
Forge every stream.
I did drink some good Northeast beer. We drove into Vermont, which was 4 minutes away, specifically to go to a liquor store because there are certain beers that they do not distribute outside of the state. So they have a liquor store right over the state line where you can buy Heady Topper and Sip of Sunshine and Focal Banger and all these really famous beers. They're just there. They're in a cooler where you can't get them over the state line. So I was just like, that's kind of cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I bought some of that. And
least surprising portion of Ben's trip so far. He drove across state lines to get beer, and you did a cannonball run in Massachusetts.
It only took me about 10 minutes.
In Austin, Massachusetts.
I was nowhere near Austin, Massachusetts.
A joke that never ever will get old for me. I don't think it will ever stop being funny. That movie's 20 years old now, and it's still
road
funny.
Road trip apparently does not age. Apparently, Road Trip is eternal. It will never.
And it's funny. Another a spiritual sequel to Road Trip is going to come up in just a few moments in our podcast. How's that for a tease for that even Ben doesn't know?
Oh shit!
But wanted to dig into a few intro topics. One reason why I want to do some of the intro topics is a couple of things. One, we unfortunately do not have Nick on the podcast tonight.
We were trying to work it out.
He's also, I really wanted to interview him about the fact that he just had 2 large-scale earthquakes in his neck of the woods, and I've heard
and then became the correspondent for
Yes.
for the local news.
We unfortunately there was a sound issue. He couldn't actually get on the newscast, but he was about ready to be the correspondent for WPLG, reporting live from Los Angeles. But he underwent a couple of sort of scary hurricanes or earthquakes. Sorry.
I think almost if
Here I am, rock me like an earthquake. No.
I almost think it would be funnier if the sound was cutting out, so then it would sound even more dramatic, just like shit was going down.
Or if he was just like, well, it's pretty I can't think so good.
I'd be like, identity of Spider-Man is Peter Parker.
We had a really funny name. We were gonna because we had all these like different things. My brother goes, okay, what, like, we're gonna call you Nick Santa Croce, and they're like like producer. But then we're like coming up with all these like things like part-time Spider-Man impersonator and all these different ones. And then we sent like a flood of pictures to my brother of possible things to use. And I was like, oh, if you use like the drunk Batman photos of Nick from Halloween, and they're just God. And you're just like producer and part-time Bruce Wayne impersonator, I would have been so happy. But of course, my brother is a professional, as he reminded us, and could not engage in such reindeer games. But I'm
just happy that you used the term reindeer games.
That's the best time it's been used since the terrible John Frankenheimer directed Ben Affleck's Charlize
Ben
Theron.
Affleck was the bomb in reindeer games.
Man, reindeer games should have come up on one of my actors that I was thinking of actually for the thing tonight. But yeah, so one of the reasons why I'm going to stretch this intro out just a little bit is I started preparing the wrong topic for this podcast, and then when I got to the actual topic, I realized I was plumb out of ideas for the amount of time I had to do it. So I've prepared almost an entirely different set of things to talk about on the podcast tonight, while Ben adheres to the rules that he set forth.
And maybe we can just comment on each other's, because I think what we're going to have here is sort of a weird discussion, which we'll get to in a minute, with no real synchronicity. But we're hoping it'll be interesting enough to at least keep you engaged.
Yeah, it's almost like two people having two separate podcasts in the same room next to one another. We're going to see what happens. So I'm going to throw a little Molotov cocktail over and see how that works. But I did want to talk about a couple things to start us off. First of all, I don't know if you followed this or not, Ben, but I read this amazing article about a show that premiered, I think it's like 2 weeks ago now. But I believe it's ABC. Yeah, ABC has been doing like a lot of game shows this summer. And they've been doing, like, they brought back Press Your Luck with Elizabeth Banks hosting. And they brought back To Tell the Truth with Anthony Anderson. And they've been doing like a lot of these like celebrity game shows. But then amidst all of these, they premiered a show that in theory could work, except that they put no advertising or explanation behind it, so it confused everyone so bad. And the name of the show was like rife for Twitter to just go crazy in it. But the show is called What Just Happened, and the show is, and poor Fred Savage is the host.
I was about to say Fred Willard. What happened?
So this is the premise of What Just Happened. So the premise, by the way, sounds great. Premise is that it's an after show, like The Talking Dead or Breaking Bad or any of those ones that they did of like the people talking about a show, but it's a fake one for a show that doesn't exist, right?
Okay.
So it's a parody of after shows, talkback shows, essentially. The problem is, if you don't explain that, people just tune in thinking they're watching an actual talkback show about a show they don't know, with like famous people talking about a thing they don't understand, with no like premise being released. So
who's in this?
Kevin Smith was on the first episode. Fred Savage though plays the fake host of it's like
actually pretty funny.
It's a great idea, except that they didn't have any confidence, so they just dumped it on a Sunday night amidst a bunch of game shows, and everyone literally is like, just watch a show called What Just Happened. what just happened? and like everyone just it just bombed. Like it's going to be like the fastest canceled thing, which is unfair for everyone involved because it actually sounds like a really funny premise, but not if you don't tell your audience.
It sounds like an online show.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
First off, it doesn't sound like something that should be on ABC.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one part. But yeah, that lead up does not sound like it
got
really
a
did.
0.2 a 0.2 rating was that's like we have a 0.1 on the New Way. It's kind of amazing. It got destroyed by Univision, which is part of the article I was reading, but it really I thought it was such a funny idea, and now I really want to watch the show. But it's going to be.
But wasn't Univision showing like soccer?
Yeah, I think there might have been. It was 2 weeks ago, so possibly.
Yeah, probably they were.
It could be. Could be.
Yeah, because that's the reason why I didn't watch what just happened, because I've been supporting the Women's World Cup.
Well, I try to support everything Fred Savage does, and I missed it because it was not advertised properly.
Well, that shows where you are in the battle of the sexes there. I support the Women's World Cup, and you support Fred fucking Savage.
You know what? So this is a good segue. You didn't even know this, but you just gave me the perfect in for the next question. Ben, do you feel that air conditioning is sexist?
No.
Because someone tweeted about it this week, and it really pissed me off that I got very upset. There was an angry female posted that air conditioning in offices is too aggressive and it's built only around the men and not women who are typically colder than men, and described how it's a long-running, systematic abuse of men's power in offices.
How'd that work out for her?
Not great for most of the things. I mean, she got her answer. I'm sure she got her clicks, and which is pretty much what I'm sure.
Right, exactly.
Coming out and saying, air conditioning is BS.
Now she has 40,000 more Twitter followers.
But there's nothing that gets me angrier than someone trying to take away my right to air conditioning, because that's not fair to me.
I'll draw the line there. I mean, like, I am pro-feminist, but if all feminists were just like, yeah, we want to do away with air conditioning, I'm just like, well, fuck you.
Well, I love that a lot of other females were like, oh, so the only people that like to be cold are men. They're like, I'm going through menopause. I'm hot when I don't and have no reason to be and don't understand it. What's wrong? Like, why can't I have my air conditioning?
And you're like, I have my air conditioning set at 62.
Yeah, and then everyone else was like, you clearly don't live in Florida,
right?
Because that just doesn't work. Speaking
or prefer to work in an environment that's fucking sterile, because you do realize that as the temperature goes up, bacteria tends to spread and grow.
This is true.
This is the reason why hospitals are cold, is because it's not because they're just supposed to be. It's because it does not eliminate, but it slows the spread of bacteria around.
So this is why we have Ben on the show, because Ben will always take us back to the science behind it, and that's what I appreciate.
Science, bitch.
I wasn't going to talk about magnets, yo. So also speaking of sexism, I don't know if any of you out there are Stranger Things fans, and I'm sure you're making your way through season 3 if you haven't already binged through quite a bit of it by the time you hear this episode.
To preface this, I'm 2 episodes in.
Yes.
Beth and I are two episodes.
It's only 8, unlike a lot of the shows that are like 11 or 12 or whatever. But yeah, I'm going to give a very non-spoiler review. And mostly I just wanted to talk about something I'd mentioned to Ben about this as well. But this happens in the first couple of episodes and extends as a plot point through the rest of them. But there is such an over-the-top, like, sexist workplace displayed.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Let's stop really quick. What's your overall impression of this season?
Overall, my overall impression is I liked it quite a bit. There are like several Weird Al Yankovic references in it, so that makes me very happy.
Did you like it more or less than season 2?
I would say I liked it more than season 2 with a caveat. And again, this is veering towards spoiler, but not really. I feel once again, especially after doing a lot of it in season 2 and to an effect in season 1, there's very much a lot of splitting up of the cast, which seems to happen in many sequels and movies. They like to pair different people up and do stuff. But I feel there's a splitting up for far too long. And this happens in a lot of TV shows I've been watching as well. They've just been bothering me as of late. That I get why it tends to be somewhat for the storytelling devices. Sometimes it's also just for scheduling and that kind of stuff, which is really upsetting from that standpoint, because it really should be based on the characters. But
it's expensive.
Yeah,
you have to think about it from an X's and O's standpoint. As a coach
it just
would say.
sucks. Like it really just sucks to, like, especially you've got like a core group of characters that's a team or that wants to be together, and it sucks to only see them for a 20% or 10% of the time, all together.
I'm 100% with you, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, logistically, it's.
I get it.
When you have people who have a higher price tag because of the profile that has been raised by the properties that they're in,
Sure.
it's more difficult to allow them to exist within said property at any given time that you need them.
Well, and it's interesting though, because I mean, it's done also in other things. Like I even look at something like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where it's not really as much based on the star power, because part of the people that they're separating off are just CGI creations that could exist in anywhere that they want.
I think Guardians is an outlier too. I think what we're discussing, I think, exists more in the realm of television. Yes, because people, when shows become hits, and for people who don't know, when shows become hits, the actors renegotiate through their agents their contracts with the studios or the producing partners of the show, and they become far more expensive. As a matter of fact, I still remember this. They did this comparison. The first season of How I Met Your Mother, I think that like Allison Hannigan and Jason Segel were getting paid like $220,000 an episode, which is still a lot of money.
Yeah,
a lot of money. But they were getting paid over $1 million an episode by the last season.
Yeah.
Per episode.
Which
for a show
that
runs 22 episodes a season.
Yeah,
so
that's a lot of money.
That's over quadrupling your money. So,
but yeah. I mean, that was my bad takeaway was that. But other than that, and by the way, they make a lot of the pairings and the side stories and things that are going on there. They do a really good job with it. I thought it was compelling. I think it is easily the grossest. There's some John Carpenter-esque like
there already have been in the first 2 episodes.
I mean, really cool. It gets like I loved it. I mean, it is very clear. They've been doing like Thing references throughout the entire first 2 seasons of the show.
There's that big Thing poster in the basement.
Yes,
yeah.
They've been hinting at it, and they've basically just this season were like, okay, we're gonna go full Carpenter, and they hit it like to the point where I was disgusted by some of the things I looked at, which is wonderful. That's a great feeling to have watching a TV show.
That's great.
But yeah, I had a problem. And I hate to bring it back to Captain Marvel, but it really did. It struck me as something similar to talk about. They basically have a scene that is a 80s workplace. It's at a newspaper. The young girl, Mike's sister Nancy, works at the newspaper. She's an intern. The guys there are all like male chauvinist assholes, which I don't mind. All of that's fine. But they play the scene so over the top and broad that Ben nailed it right on the head. It felt like a sketch. It felt like a Stella sketch. Like if you were watching like a fake like workplace sexual harassment video. The performances are bizarrely like just like way over the top. And
except for Jake Busey, because he can do no wrong.
Listen, and I love Jake Busey, and he has some fun to come, but he's delivering, and part of it I think maybe is just he's delivering very poor. Like they're not even remotely funny, and I can't see any group of guys even as like these guys are guffawing and like falling out of their chairs laughing at these jokes, and the jokes are like he calls her Nancy Drew, and they're like, her name's Nancy, she wants to be a reporter. Like it's the Bill Brasky sketch. That's 100% what it turns into. Like I'm Bill Brasky, like they just all start like gurgling. It took me so out of what should be like. It's a great idea. I like what they want to do with it. They do a lot better with that same plot line later in the episodes, but the setup for it was just like, oh, come on, like we can do better than this. And that's where I say I watch stuff like Captain Marvel where there's fanboys pissing and bitching about the fact that it's like, oh, they're so over the top and they're like hitting you over the head with it. Like, no. That there's a difference of what that feels like. This beginning of Stranger Things is what feels like it. Okay, one last thing before we get into whatever this podcast is going to be tonight.
Yeah.
Ben, what are your thoughts on the latest and greatest from the MCU? It's been several episodes since we've talked full on MCU. We have a new movie. I hate that we have to do this without Nick. I will share his thoughts since I have talked to him a little bit about it. But what are your thoughts on Spider-Man Far From Home?
Well, in the vein that I like that they've carved out in the MCU for Spidey, for our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, it's just delightful. It's absolutely delightful and fun and breezy and doesn't feel too heavy, and manages to continue to keep the stakes high but feel like a completely different thing than the Endgame and Infinity War, and much different than Captain Marvel that came before it, by keeping it as essentially a high school movie with stakes. And it's fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, and that's what I was hinting at the beginning of the podcast is the way that Watts shoots they're on a school trip to Venice and to where they go from. They go to
Prague.
Prague and Venice. It's Euro trip. It's it was very much it's their Euro trip, and he shoots it so perfect for just that kind of fun you have with these group of people on these trips, how the relationships develop on those trips. I think he does a phenomenally good job of setting up that whole idea of them on this trip abroad and what it means for him. And the best praise I can give it is that it does. I've talked. Nick and I have talked about a little bit, or butted heads a little bit about on the podcast. Is I don't love the superhero movies where the superhero has a secret identity and he's got to keep it hidden from so and so, and it's just like plot contrivance, like all these things that just have to happen so that
it's one of the tropes that's very easy to sort of fall into. And that's the whole problem. That's the problem with a lot of the Spider-Man movies, the earlier Spider-Man movies, is it's just like, oh, I'm still trying to keep this from Aunt May. Well, at the beginning of this movie, you already know that Aunt May knows that he's Spider-Man.
Yes,
so
and
that's great.
And they do a great job of it's the most they've done of the
spoiler.
It's the most they've done of it in the series of him having to do it with Ned knows, which is good because he's got a guy kind of on his side, but. It's played very nicely and satisfyingly for me for the first time. And it didn't seem like every time like it was happening because plot. It kind of felt like these things were sort of happening organically how they had to. And it plays in very nicely with sort of where where it goes in the third act and some of the advice that Peter's getting. It feeds right into it to be like, no, you should spend more time with these people and with these things and focus on that stuff. There's some really nice sort of misdirection with a lot of stuff. And I think they do a great job, and Ben nails it. It is on par with me for the Guardians franchises feeling the most like its own subgenre of the Marvel movies. It has a very you were in a Spider-Man movie from the very beginning of it, and it never slips out of it. It keeps that tone really nice, and it still offers. There's some really nice heartfelt moments in this movie.
100%.
Especially Jon Favreau doing some great work toward the third act is Happy, which I love seeing him back on there. But there's some, they're dealing with the aftermath of Endgame. And there's some nice little dramatic points that they do them so easily that you kind of forget that's not that easy.
No, it's. I thought it was absolutely. I think it's interesting, and I know that you're a huge Kevin Smith fan, but I just went to see what his reaction was, and he said it was one of his favorite of the entire MCU.
Yeah.
Which it kind of plays to his strengths because it is the most comic heavy. I feel like it's. There are a couple of action sequences that play out so perfectly like like panels from an action standpoint, where you're getting this one action and then a reverse shot of this other action happening, and then a reverse shot of this other thing happening, and it's very, very. It's very effective in the way that it tells the story, but once again, it stays away from being dour, from being overly heavy. And I think that a lot of that has to do with Tom Holland, because Tom Holland is just effortlessly charming and charismatic, and it's just a fucking perfect Peter Parker. The guy does that slight Queen's accent, just great. He's fantastic. But ultimately, I think that the reason why the movie works altogether it was well constructed from an overall thought standpoint, and everybody knew. Everybody, spoiler alert, everybody, please.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the movie, or if you're not interested in hearing about the movie, then you should probably just fast forward about 10 minutes and go into our asinine topic. But what Jake Gyllenhaal did from a fun, you could tell he was having fun with Mysterio. And as soon as they announced that Mysterio is there, it shows Mysterio like he's like, you don't want any part of this or whatever like that. I was just like, this guy's a fucking dick. And you knew he was, because Mysterio has always been a bad guy in the thing. And yet, even though I knew it was coming and picked it out from the first frame of the movie, I was just like, nope, these are all holograms. He's doing this. I knew it. I knew it right from the very beginning. I said, all this is fake. He's faking it for everybody. And he's building himself up to be a superhero. I knew that was the major plot point, and that's what Mysterio was doing. I knew it from the very, very get-go. I had a suspicion walking into the theater, and I knew that that's what was going to happen.
Well, I love... I was going to share... Oh, yeah.
I was going to say that Gyllenhaal did everything he needed to do to bring that home, to be like, okay, I'm sold. Like, he's having fun with the character. He's completely over the top. Almost had a little bit of Nightcrawler, like a little bit of that duplicity.
His one big scene. Nick hit found something very interesting. I think this is a great observation, because it's also a great way for them to keep this franchise going. But you talk about Batman's rogues gallery are all villains that he creates one way or another. Kind of, he's involved somewhat in their formulation. And Spider-Man's rogues galleries are almost entirely people that are jealous of Spider-Man and their stuff. But in the MCU Spider-Man, his rogues gallery is all people pissed off with Tony Stark. And I think that's a really interesting observation to make it that basically Spider-Man's career is going to be making up for his father figure kind of dropping the ball on some of these things that if the Vulture, if Tony Stark hadn't taken all of the technology and debris cleanup from him, there'd be no Vulture. Tony Stark hadn't dismissed Jake Gyllenhaal and these kind of things, there'd be no Mysterio.
Just imagine what they'll do with Kraven the Hunter in the next movie.
I mean, there's a ton. Yeah, like who did like? Okay, Tony Stark definitely banged Kraven's wife, and that's gonna be that. I'm gonna call it right now that Kraven that Tony Stark banged Kraven's wife, and now Kraven's gonna come after Spider-Man. But I think they did a great job setting up, and Gyllenhaal's so good because I like that you can tell that. So, and Gyllenhaal's arc is a little bit of like, I want to be noticed. I want to he's kind of falling for his own shit too. Of like, I kind of want to be this superhero. I'm gonna be a better superhero than Iron Man. So he's not disingenuous in his scenes with Peter Parker. I don't feel. I don't feel.
I think that's the whole point. They established that pretty well in the movie because he's always just like, I really didn't want to have to like.
Yeah, why did you do this?
I didn't want to have to hurt Peter. Like I wanted him to be in the dark.
Yeah,
like because he wanted to feel loved. He wanted to feel loved by Peter the same way that Peter loved Iron Man. He wanted to be looked up to. And so I mean, obviously he's still sociopathic, but that's what he wanted. He knew that Peter was a good kid.
Yeah.
And was
he
just
says
like,
that. You're a good kid, Peter.
Yeah, you're a good kid, Peter. But it's because he knew that and knew the way that he obviously loved him, or thought that he loved him. It's a great dynamic. I'm really happy with the way that they played with that movie. And like I said, ultimately, any movie that gets to have fun like that and just be, like I said, because ultimately it deals with some heady topics and some heavy stuff, and it totally changes the dynamic of the MCU at the end of the movie and the post-credit sequences, and it's
we'll
great.
Keep that secret.
We won't discuss that in detail, but it's extremely effective and it's extremely fun, and it's fun also just watching. I mean, the stuff that could just be super corny, because like the Martin Starr character, like the teachers on the tour, which are super dumb. Because it's so flighty and earnest in the way that it's presenting itself, and it's not like this dark, dour movie that's just trying to throw in like comic relief just for the hell of it. Like a Zack Snyder DC movie. it ends up feeling just kind of funny and kind of light and fun.
It felt to me, tonally to me, it felt the most like the X-Men cartoon series from the 90s.
That's really, really good. That's a good idea.
Because it felt like when they would do those 3-part episodes where they would do one of the big comic book storylines, you had some serious things, but there was always a little bit of a corny comic joke in it. And I think everyone in the movie knows exactly what movie they're in. They're playing it great. Yeah. And by the way, also Zendaya, was even more sold on in this one. She does some really, really good fucking work in this movie. I'm enjoying seeing kind of her evolution as that character. I
really liked the other girl too.
Betty Brant. Betsy Brant.
She was so funny.
She'll grow up to be Elizabeth Banks as the original Betsy Brant or Betty Brant. Betsy Brant. Elizabeth Banks played her in the Raimi movies. But,
right, exactly.
Okay, God help us. We're going to get into the topic now and see how this goes. But Ben, why don't you give me the exact wording that you gave me for the podcast? Because I was a little misinformed.
Okay, so if you would like me to look up the exact actual wording,
I can find it.
So I have it right here.
Okay,
it's fine. So I said I had a topic idea. The worst of our heroes. Think about your favorite actor, actress, director. Discuss the worst thing they ever did in your opinion.
Okay, so I prepared a thing based on the awful things these actors may have done in their actual life. So, like, I was preparing Kevin Spacey and Bryan Singer and Louis C.K. were the first 3 that I started. And then midway through that, I go, ooh, this seems like stuff we've covered sort of on the podcast before. So I texted Ben at about 1:00 today and said, hey, when you said the worst thing they've ever done, first of all, it was also just the use of heroes. I was just like, oh, my heroes. That made them so personal to me. I said, did you mean actually like the worst thing they've done in their lives? Or possibly did you mean the worst role or acting or whatever?
And I thought it was very clear that I meant their work. Like
work, yes.
You're talking about the worst thing that your favorite people ever did. So I'm talking about that.
By the way, named this podcast "Wasted Talent."
This response from you was prompted, I believe, by a text that I sent you because when we realized that Nick was not going to be able to join us, I said,
"Yes,
because we're going to be talking about these people, let's also talk about the best work that they ever did."
Yeah, and that's where I was like, I was like, you mean the non-rapey things that they?
The time Kevin Spacey gave that boy an ice cream cone.
The time Kevin Spacey didn't rape somebody and it was just like, no, not today. So that's where things started to turn around me. So I kind of had to scramble. I spend a decent amount of time prepping for the podcast. I had a lot of work to do today, so I want you to start because I kind of want to see where we're going to go. I had a very difficult time with this. I'm just going to say it.
Okay. So where do you want me to start?
Wherever you want to start, Ben.
Well, so the reason why I thought of the topic is because we've talked a lot about. I feel like a lot of times our favorite actors, our favorite performers, our favorite directors. There are tons of people that we love and respect, but I think that if our pop culture history has taught anybody anything, is that all of our heroes are fallible, creatively, and I mean that. That's not a bad thing. It's actually a really productive thing. I think it's a great thing when artists tend to objectively fail. I think that they tend to grow from it. I think that they tend to do better work afterwards because of it. Whether they notate and actually give some sort of credence to the fact of whether they had failed or not. I feel that that's a lot more. Often directors will go back and justify their loss of creative composure on a certain project based off of where they were.
And I think honestly that was my biggest hurdle is that I had like 10 directors instantly pop into my head for various properties, but I had a lot harder time. I had an almost impossible time with actresses, to be honest. And with actors, I also did because I recognize what you're asking, right? So
Sure.
I want to kind of draw a little bit of a line around this. I don't think this includes actors doing bad movies for the money.
Nope.
Where they're just like John Turturro in Transformers is is doing what he was hired to do in that movie.
100%.
Right? He has been hired to do a Coen Brothers movie because Michael Bay has a hard-on for the Coen Brothers and decided, hey, how about you play an over-the-top character that would never show up in he's doing exactly what he's paid to do. And I wouldn't count that as it's not a good performance, but it's not bad acting because he knows what he's doing.
And that's exactly the delineation that I think needs to be drawn, is that there are tons of, and I'll actually start into, because when I first started thinking about this topic, I launched into it almost from the same perspective that you did, is that I was immediately thinking about, my favorite directors and like what I like least of their work. But then I started thinking about actors, and that's the thing that became very interesting to the topic. And that's actually after that I suggested it, because I thought it was a very interesting sort of dichotomy of when you look at, they're doing great work in a bad movie. Mm-hmm. They're doing, bad work in a potentially decent movie, or potentially better than decent movie. Where is that line? What do you feel like differentiates those performances? What do you think that drove them to do those types of performances in those certain situations? But ultimately, the actor thing is going to be very subjective, because it's about somebody who we really like and what we think that why they didn't bring it for a certain role or something along those lines. But anyways, what I was going to say is, like, I actually ended up changing my choices of actor and director and actress. And the reason is because, and I'll just launch into it like this. Yeah. My favorite actor is Gary Oldman. I think Gary Oldman's a chameleon. I think he's fantastic. Gary Oldman has been in a lot of shitty movies. And I mean a lot of shitty movies. He's always elevated the material. And so I could pick out performances where I feel like he was phoning it in the most, but it felt like a little counterintuitive to the conversation, because I'm just like, we could talk about The Unborn in 2009, and what am I really going to say about The Unborn?
Or Tiptoes.
Yeah. Oh, don't you bring Tiptoes into this fucking conversation. That is a masterpiece, and that is the role of a lifetime for Mr. Gary Oldman. Sir Gary Oldman.
So first of all, Ben, the trailer describes it perfectly as a very special performance by Gary
Oldman.
So you did the exact same fucking thing I did. I know I did. So I got out my gun. I put my Gary Oldman movies up on there, and I said, you know what? I can't pull the trigger on any of these movies.
Exactly. And I also did the same thing with actress, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Mm-hmm. And actually, I also ended up doing it for director, too, because I looked at... So one of my favorite directors of all time is Woody Allen. Without talking about the other...
Yes.
All the tertiary
that
stuff.
Could also work for both of the podcasts.
Which is all... Yes. Yeah, exactly. Speculation or not, that would be a different topic to think about. However... Woody Allen has effectively made a movie a year since 1974. His body of work is so vast, it goes from brilliant to relatively middling to bottom tier
Scoop.
Woody Allen. Actually, Scoop isn't that bad of a movie, in my opinion. Yeah. I don't think that Scoop is that bad. In the pantheon of Woody Allen movies, I think Hollywood Ending is a lot worse than Scoop is. But
Hollywood Ending is one of the few Woody Allen movies I've actually seen in the theater. Oddly enough, it's when I was on my big movie kick.
It's so bad.
I was watching it when I was just hungry for film, like just to get in film. So I didn't remember having a problem with it, but
it's really bad.
I do remember Kenneth Branagh being woefully miscast playing Woody Allen. That's in Hollywood Ending, right? Am I thinking? No, I'm thinking Celebrity. Which one is Hollywood Ending?
Hollywood Ending is the one where Woody Allen's blind. He's a blind director.
Oh, maybe I haven't seen that one.
Anyways,
I was thinking of Celebrity. Sorry.
Well, so the reason why I immediately went to Woody Allen is because I love, if you're talking about the brilliance of Woody Allen with Sleeper, Annie Hall, Manhattan, Hannah and Her Sisters, Match Point, Mighty Aphrodite, Vicky Cristina Barcelona. I mean, just go on and on and on. I mean, with his great movies, there's a bad movie to match it, almost on the other side of the spectrum. And I was like, his filmography is so vast, it's difficult to kind of encapsulate, or to specifically pick out one and pick on it and be like, oh, this is the reason why it's bad. If it was one, I would pick out Hollywood Ending, but I'm not going to really talk about Woody Allen because, like I said, so I ended up actually kind of revising my list and going to the actor, actress, and directors that I love that have smaller bodies of work over the amount of time.
Okay.
Because my second, and that was the other thing, is my second thought was for director was like, I'm going to go to Richard Linklater. I was like, okay, I don't like Food Incorporated or the 2006. Greg Kinnear was in it.
Yeah, it's something.
It's like a farce.
Yeah.
It's basically making fun of McDonald's.
Yes.
And it's kind of or Fast Food Nation. Not
Fast Food Nation, that's it.
No, not Food Incorporated. That's a different movie. So Fast Food Nation was not a good movie, but then I'm thinking like,
I didn't hate that movie though either.
But I'm like, how am I going to pick on that movie that much?
Yeah.
Because it really doesn't. It doesn't inspire vitriol in me. It doesn't feel like, a complete misstep in this career that I consider brilliant. So, that doesn't, I was like, I'm going to completely kind of usurp that. And I tried to find examples of an actor and actress and a director that I admire where I feel like there was a serious misstep.
And I just wanted, this is a total random interjection. I apologize for this, Ben.
Fine.
But I just pulled up Richard Linklater on IMDb.
Yep.
And as you're talking about doing smaller filmmakers things, and we're looking for topics for our next podcast, I think Richard Linklater's filmography for each of us to tackle, and I mean, obviously we know what you're going to tackle out of that, which is the trilogy, the I would assume you want to get
or Waking Life, which I think is a perfect movie.
That as well. I mean, you can take. I mean, we can take as many as we want, but I have. I mean, for me, it's Suburbia.
I would do the Before series and Waking Life. Those are mine.
I would take Suburbia, Bernie, me, and Orson Welles, and then give Nick the other ones. But I think us doing
Nick Dazed and Confused.
It's a weird one to do, but he has such an interesting filmography that just stuck in my head that maybe we should do that for one of our.
I still
episodes.
love, and this is probably not interesting to anybody who's listening, but one of Richard Linklater's earlier movies in the 90s was The Newton Boys, and it was on randomly one night, and I was watching it, and there's a scene where Ethan Hawke is shooting a sign that says Bandera, Texas.
Yes.
On it. So I took a video of it and I sent it to Matt and Chris, which is their mother.
Our mom lives out in Texas, in Bandera.
Lives in Bandera, Texas, which is a very small place.
Yes,
and that's a very specific.
But it's the cowboy capital of the world. Just to let you know,
apparently it is the cowboy.
Since my mom is now listening, and as she said, interesting podcast. A few too many F-bombs, but winky face. But yes,
I'll try not to fucking curse too much more on this.
I think we were completely clean up to that point.
Of course we were.
Fuck.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mary.
Sorry, Mom.
Sorry, Mary. No. Anyways, that was all for effect.
Which is also super funny because Matthew McConaughey is in that movie, and Matthew McConaughey was on the Kimmel Show about a decade ago, and Kimmel goes, "Hey, I found this picture of you when you were 10 years old, and it's him winning the Bandera County Rodeo."
Wow!
So that's everything comes back to Bandera, folks.
Everything,
but continue, except for me. Yes, go on.
Anywho,
all right, so no Linklater for you.
No Linklater for me. So I decided to try and find, like I said, people who I admire, who I really love, whose bodies of work are small enough where I could pick out something that I could really pick on.
Yes.
So that was my approach. Now, before I launch into any of those, do you have anybody that you had in mind for like an initial one? Because I'm fine with talking about any of those.
Okay, so like I said, I had a very difficult time when it came to actor, mainly because I feel oftentimes it's the director or it's a miscasting or there's so many factors that go into it. So I had it very hard. And listen, I'm not going to talk bad about Tom Hanks. It's not in my nature. I would love to rip Tom Hanks apart. People hate him in The Lady Killers. People are not. The biggest thing I could say about Tom Hanks I've disliked in his career is I hate the Dan Brown novels. I have no interest in watching any of those 3 Dan Brown movies of the
There are 3 of them? I thought there were only 2.
Inferno, Angels, and some Demons, and the Da Vinci Code. Did all three.
I never saw one of them.
3 of them. I didn't see. I've not watched any of the 3 of them, and I love Ron Howard too. I know you're not as big Ron Howard fan and director, but I love Ron Howard.
I'm about to talk about some Ron Howard.
Okay. Oh shit. I love Ron Howard. So I've been upset that the 2 of them have been tied up over these 3 movies together. That just it drives me nuts. So directors was easy for me, and I had multiple directors, and that's what kept happening to me. Is I would attack maybe an actor or a performance, and I would come back to it and say, I think it's the director or the writing that is the problem with it. But I can give you one on the actor side if you want one on the actor side.
Sure, let's start with actor then.
Okay,
let's end with director.
Okay, so this by the way is going to tie into a director and also going to tie into a big realization that I had today. So I remember being very excited about the Peter Jackson directed King Kong movie, the movie.
As was I. I was
And
there opening night.
I was especially excited by the casting. We've got Naomi Watts in the female lead role. We've got
Jack Black was the
Adrian Brody, and then Jack Black as the director. And I'm in my head, I'm like, I want a big beard. I want him in full Orson Welles mode. I had this very distinct idea of how you use Jack Black in that movie perfectly. And Jack Black is one of the weakest parts of that movie for me on screen because it's not, I don't know what happened in that performance or that direction.
Brody totally worked.
Yes, Brody's great, and Naomi Watts is
great.
Fine. Jack Black is completely out of place in the movie that they wind up making.
100%.
And that was a huge hit for me because he was right on that cusp of kind of like, he done School of Rock. He's starting to do some of these things where people are like, oh shit, Jack Black can actually, he's got a little bit of nuance. He can do these things performance. And I remember thinking it was such a slam dunk to cast him in that role. And I don't know where it went wrong. I don't know that it's him. It doesn't seem like it's him because he's not as off in most of the other things that I've seen him do.
And to actually speak about Richard Linklater is one of those people who's just like, Jack is one of the most talented people you'll ever meet in your entire life. He can just command a scene. And you can see it in not only School of Rock, but in Bernie.
Yeah.
And what he does in Bernie and just the gravitas that he brings to that character and in quiet moments.
Yeah.
And so you have to think it has to do with the ironic part is that Peter Jackson only had one person in mind for that role, and it was Jack Black. It was the one person that he said, I had Jack Black in mind when they were developing that character and when that script was being written for the new King Kong.
Yeah, and why I said why I was so apologetic about my preparation for this podcast is I felt in each of my cases I kept falling back more into expectation versus reality, and I felt like I was retreading things that we've done, but.
I feel like you're 100% right on that though, because he feels. I won't say it's the worst performance from an acting standpoint that Jack Black has ever done, but he feels the most out of place within the context.
And it's the one with the most
narrative.
potential too. I mean, it really should be a thing. And then, but then I also, in looking at kind of this idea of heroes or people that you respect or like letting you down, I also started to just think of Peter Jackson in general, and I started looking at Peter Jackson, going, dear God,
he's the modern day George Lucas.
Has Peter Jackson directed anything better than the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or even remotely as good as the Lord, other than Tintin? But that's
first off, he's directed something better than the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is Heavenly Creatures.
Okay, yes.
But that was before
it. But yeah, I mean, Lovely Bones, not
great,
not great. The Hobbit
not
movies,
bad. Actually, not as bad as it was received at the time. With the time it was released,
yeah.
You watch that movie now; it actually has it's a lot better than it has.
It's fine. And it sucks to put someone down for a movie that's just fine, but you're expecting something great from them.
And actually, I love the first Hobbit movie, and actually the third one wasn't that bad either. But the Hobbit movies were obviously a step down from.
And for me,
that.
the second Hobbit movie is the one I like the best.
Right, of course.
I mean, because the last half of it, just anything with Smaug, and Bilbo. I like that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So I'll put so my not necessarily my hero of actors, but I'll put my actor up as Jack Black and my disappointment.
Since I could not grab onto my Gary Oldman, best actor sort of
Yes.
thing, my wife always gives me a really hard time because she says I have a hard-on for a particular actor because I'll see anything that he's in. You know what actor this is? One of the biggest stars in the world.
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
100% Tom Cruise. I love Tom Cruise's dedication. I love the fact that he is in the Robert Redford, sort of Humphrey Bogart mold of being a star that has the ability to act through what they do as a movie star, but still be able to be adaptable to the circumstances that they're in. It's the same thing that movie stars with Costner or like other guys.
I was literally just going to say that.
I'm not going to hate on any Costner.
No,
shit.
I literally
that is in the bylaws of this fucking podcast that we cannot say a negative thing about Kevin Costner.
First of all, Kevin Costner is literally in our notes for what the podcast is about. But second of all, I was just about to say the two things Ben and I most commonly bond over are an unabashed love of Costner and Cruise. It really is. And my brother is on the Cruise side of that, not so much Costner. My brother and I are also Affleck apologists.
I like Affleck too,
but yeah, I think you're dead right. There is no one else like him right now.
Right. And he's always had a magnetism about him as a performer. And always, you can tell, pours himself into every role and every moment and everything like that. Now, so I hate to bring this back to any sort of direction, but ultimately, there are so many poor choices made that cannot be described in direction in this. And I don't know if we've talked about this before. I don't think we have talked about this before. I said I was going to bring Ron Howard into it. Far and Away is a fucking terrible movie. It is god fucking awful. It's one of the worst historical epics I have ever seen. It is worse than Australia, than Baz Luhrmann's Australia. It has absolutely no rhyme or reason when it comes to plot or act structure. The acting is all over the fucking place, including their
Nicole Kidman,
their accents and the way that they speak through this. You could tell that all Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise wanted to do was bang each other, which they were doing through the entire course of the movie and falling in love and then getting married.
Fake news.
Fake news. Oh, yeah. Fake news. It's an awful fucking movie that somehow gets a pass nowadays. I feel like
does it really?
Yes,
is anyone talking about Far and Away, Ben? Is anyone lauding that movie?
Every time people just look at cinema scores, look back at it and look at the way that people rate
it was not well received at the time. I have not revisited or had any desire to ever revisit it.
It was moderately well received at the time because a lot of girls apparently really liked it.
Because his shirt was off and he smiled a lot.
That's sexist. But
if my mom is listening, she will like this anecdote. My brother was really good friends with a guy named I won't say his last name, but Owen. Owen bore a passing resemblance to Tom Cruise in general.
Wow.
But when he smiled, he had the Tom Cruise smile swagger. So when that movie came out,
Do you still know Owen?
I'll get him for you on Facebook.
You have his number?
I just remember him literally being the happiest senior in high school of all time because that movie came out and he was like, "Oh, he's smiling in every trailer with his shirt off." I was like, "My world's great right now. It's doing just fine." Yeah, it is a terrible movie. Poor Ron Howard that we have to talk about.
But so here's the thing: Ron Howard is not that bad of a director. He's done some bad work, including the Angels and Demons of the world and the Da Vinci Codes. He's done great work. I think he understands the anatomy of a scene and he understands how to put stuff together.
Actors,
yes,
normally,
normally. Tom Cruise makes some very strange decisions in that movie that I think he was just too young and too cocky to think he could pull off. And ultimately, I think that in construction of that movie, I think the reason why it fails is in a large part through the actors. And that's including Nicole Kidman, who is an actor I fucking love. I love Nicole Kidman. I think she's far more talented from an actual character acting standpoint than Tom Cruise is.
Sure.
Tom Cruise is a magnetic star, and Nicole Kidman is a very nuanced actor. And they are both entirely miscast in that movie, and they're both terrible in that movie. And a lot of it has to do with the script. A lot of it has to do with, but ultimately when it comes down to it, they both just make terrible decisions. They have inconsistent performances. And I hate him in that movie. I hate the fact that I have to always think about him being like, how come you don't like my hat? When I see him in like fucking movies I love. When I see him in Magnolia, I still sometimes think about him being like, how come you don't like my hat? Which of course.
That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, you still see, like,
I still see him saying that sometimes.
it's like, you just broke into his accent. I still see him saying it that sometimes.
Why don't you like my hat?
Oh, man alive.
It's such a dumb performance.
Hey Ben, I'm gonna give you something to envision.
Okay.
Instead of that, every time that you go to the dark place and you see Tom Cruise in Far and Away, imagine it's the same year, 1992, 93? 92. And a young HBO has decided this is the year we're going to start doing a Game of Thrones adaptation. And we want to cast Tom Cruise as Jon Snow. And now you're going to picture Tom Cruise as Jon Snow every time instead of him as whatever his character's name is in Far and Away.
I don't want it.
Exactly. He's going to be the same bad accent, but it won't be any worse.
It's true.
It'll be just wonderful. Okay, all right. So this is good. I like this one.
Okay, so
I like this one.
I can curtail this if you want to into my female.
Yeah, please, because I really have very little on the female side.
And so I hate to use the term actress because I know a lot. They're all actors. But I have to say female just because of the roles that they have played traditionally in cinema.
Okay,
they're obviously all actors. I'm talking about the female, the actress.
Okay.
So I'm going to.
We have like 10 listeners. I don't think any of them are going to write any letters.
Your mom might.
How dare you?
So, I went aside, did the same thing I did earlier, where I had a couple that I really wanted to talk about, and I realized I was like, oh, how am I going to spread apart 150 different roles?
Sure.
And pick one that I'm really going to pick on. So I went to somebody who's been very selective about their roles and who is one of my favorite actors, and that's Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to have some crossover here in a minute. Is Sigourney Weaver is completely different than both the kind of the Gary Oldmans of the world, who are complete, chameleons and move through roles, which Sigourney Weaver is not, and complete movie stars like Tom Cruise or other actors, female actors in that vein, which Sigourney Weaver is not.
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver is somebody who takes her role very seriously, and researches the shit out of everything that she does, and has a huge commanding presence. And I think is undeniable. Is a strong performer, always a strong performer.
Sure.
Typically within the context of the movies that she's in. She's never much more than some sort of derivation of herself, but I
don't know that I agree with that entirely. I want to see where you're going with this, but I'm getting nervous.
Okay. But I love Sigourney Weaver. I always have. And I do find it ironic that... So, funny enough, first screen role ever. What movie? Okay, so her first screen role ever was Annie Hall.
Annie Hall, yeah.
Which is Woody Allen.
Along with Jeff Goldblum.
Yes.
When he was just casting tall people.
I forgot my mantra. That's Jeff Goldblum's one line, which apparently he says people still say to him like on the street to this day, because it's a great line. But okay, I'm not going to bring up Alien. I'm actually going to bring up Aliens because what happened with Weaver and Aliens, it was such a distillation of her talent and a young upstart director, somebody who had passion, because believe it or not, Sigourney Weaver being nominated for Best Actress for Aliens was the last time that an actor or actress, or excuse me, that an actress was nominated for Best Actress for a science fiction movie. Last time it was 1986. She is fucking phenomenal in that movie. She is the embodiment of learning how to use your power as a woman. I mean, she's the fucking, like, the absolute, like, architecture of a feminist character in that she learns to kind of, not only is she the one who's always right, where all the guys around her are fucking wrong, but at the end she's the one who takes charge of the fucking situation and goes in there and takes everything over. She's amazing in that movie. So what do you think that, I would like to ask you what you think the movie is that I'm going to say that she's not great in.
I have to assume in the same time frame. I mean, would say Working Girl. No,
it's not in the same time frame. I'm just saying, based off of that whole discussion of Alien or Aliens and her great work in those movies, what do you think is the worst movie that I think she did?
I honestly, I don't. I'd have to look at her. Again, I look at like breeze through her filmography real quick.
So this was a failure here because I thought that you were about to say Alien Resurrection, which is not what I'm going to say.
No, that was not. That's not what I was.
It's not what I'm going to say. The worst work she ever did was in Avatar.
I mean,
now,
I didn't want to go there.
Listen, again, we can blame direction all we want to on Avatar.
Balls.
No, obviously, Matt and I both have our own opinions about this movie.
It's terrible.
But Sigourney Weaver's first line when she wakes up out of the thing and she's just like, I want a goddamn cigarette, is so poorly delivered and so poorly written. I remember just watching it and just like, I remember cringing in my chair, just being like, oh, this is like a fucking high school production. Sigourney Weaver showed up for the Avatar movies, and now multiple movies apparently, because I think she's doing the voice of the
17
tree.
17 of them now,
She's doing the voice of the fucking tree or something like that. I mean, who knows? She showed up for that because Cameron helped make a career for her. She has absolutely zero skin in that game, and you could tell. It looked like somebody who was once a maybe promising TV soap opera actor trying to deliver lines. And I have no qualms about saying that. I feel like it was like she just showed up on set that day and was fed her lines and said her lines. It's one of the most, and the ironic part is I don't think that all of the performances in Avatar are bad. No, I think that Giovanni Ribisi is great in that.
I do not like him, and I know you do, but I think Zoe Saldana is phenomenal.
Zoe Saldana is fantastic in that movie.
I think Zoe Saldana is. She suffers from what I call the Mexican syndrome. That sounds like a terrible slur. Let me qualify that one more time. Let me start over. That was
the Mexican syndrome.
That was a terrible transition. I'm so sorry.
You're being Brad Pitt and Julia Roberts.
Yes. I'm being. Oh, God damn it! That was the worst transition I have ever done on the show.
I'm gonna call your brother.
Oh man, as soon as I started, I'm like, nope.
The Mexican syndrome.
The Mexican syndrome, not the China syndrome, which is a great movie, but the Mexican syndrome.
That's like, I don't mean to distill an entire culture or race, but Mexico is a terrible place.
Oh no! Oh, it took an hour to go off the rails, and I did it.
You did it.
I did it on my own.
It's all good. It's all good.
There's a movie called The Mexican, directed by Gore Verbinski. We've talked about it in the show before. You got Brad Pitt and Julia Roberts doing middling. They're just movie stars showing up for a movie and trying to play caricatures of themselves. And then you have James Gandolfini steps in with the most nuanced, wonderfully written, and incredibly impeccably acted performance in it. And his elevation makes everything else look that much shittier. And that's how I feel.
Including Gore Verbinski's direction.
Yes. And I'm a Gore fan, actually. I like Gore Verbinski. I really do. I think I'd like to see him return to a better franchise and do some good shit with it. I think the first Pirates movie is fucking fun as hell. I think Rango is great. Yeah. And I don't dislike The Ring. The American version of The Ring is great. I think Gore's got something in him. He's going to get there. That's my opinion. But I think Zoe Saldana is too good for the movie she's in, and makes everyone else, 100%. Especially Sam Worthington, just look like cardboard across from. But you're right. I remember you and I going to see Avatar with Beth.
With my wife.
At a midnight showing. And I just remember also, like, we kept looking at the Avatar version of Sigourney Weaver, and we're like, okay, the face is eerily incredible. Like, the work they did on that. But the performance is just as bad in the mocap as it is, and you're like, oh yeah, this is very a disappointing return for this actress.
Yeah, so
that is a good one. It is honestly, I went through Sigourney and I thought about talking about Avatar, but I also thought it was maybe too much of the CGI, and it wasn't a fair fight necessarily on that.
So do you want to know what my crossover is with
yes,
my director?
Please.
Okay, so with director, I kept on thinking about all these directors I really love. Let's rewind a little bit, though. So a lot of people would say, not a lot of people, actually. I think if you've watched the movie, maybe in retrospect now, you might think something about it. Anyways, I'm getting off a tangent here. One of my favorite directors of all time, like I said, I went away from Linklater. I went away from Woody Allen. I went away from a lot of the classic directors I like Capra and things along those lines, who didn't.
Are you a big Frank Capra fan?
I'm a huge Frank Capra fan.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is one of my favorite movies. But I would say that one of my first filmmaking director loves was with Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who directed Delicatessen and City of Lost Children, on Long Dimanche en Fiancé, Very Long Engagement.
¿Qué pasa?
Well, yes.
Okay, I guess.
Obviously, I mean, Amelie is the big one. But so for those who don't know really his career arc, he directed a few shorts, did Delicatessen, which was this huge international success. Jeunet and Caro was the production designer. They co-wrote and kind of co-designed the movies together, and then Jeunet was the director. They did the same thing for City of Lost Children, which is this beautiful, just dark masterpiece. And if you haven't seen Jeunet films, then besides Amelie, because I feel like everybody has seen Amelie, you gotta seek out some of these other movies because they are fucking amazing. They're so good. But Jeunet and Caro split as a creative duo right after City of Lost Children in 1996. And Jeunet was immediately hired as the director of Alien Resurrection, which was the fourth film in the Alien franchise, which was written by Joss Whedon, who came in and wrote this very off-brand, not Alien, sci-fi ragtag team of people trying to survive against aliens. Oh, actually, I know what it is. It's called Firefly. He wrote Firefly before Firefly came out, basically.
And also, this is amazingly on the tails of David Fincher's, I technically call it failed. I mean, it did okay at the box office, but it was a failure. Alien 3, Alien Cubed, which I'm sort of a fan of, to be honest, but in a different way. But yes, this was the follow-up to that.
So, ironically, I don't think that it's the worst movie of all time. It's not it's not the failure that it's purported to be, I feel like, in some sort of circles. However, when you look at the body of work that Jeunet has done otherwise, when you look at aside from maybe the marvelous T.S. Spivet, which is Weinstein fucked that movie for him, but Micmacs,
along with other things,
Micmacs masterpiece, A Very Long Engagement masterpiece, Amelie masterpiece, City of Lost Children masterpiece, Delicatessen, ultimately one of my top 10 movies of all time, masterpiece. Alien Resurrection sits out as something that is very, very clearly not what he wanted to do. Yet he says he's still proud of the movie, but he's never directed and never taken finances from anybody in Hollywood ever since that movie happened. Now, Sigourney Weaver, that's why I was going to say a lot of people would say that's Sigourney Weaver's best or worst performance, because Sigourney Weaver is a fucking amazing clown show in that movie. She is over the top good because she embraces kind of the macabre aspect of it and is completely over the top. Winona Ryder, also fantastic in the movie. Ron Perlman, Brad Dourif, all of the performers actually bought into the movie. It was just poorly constructed. It was a mismatch of somebody who wanted to do something very specific from a writing standpoint that didn't fit within that universe, and somebody who had a visual style that wasn't going to mesh with that, and the studio is pushing ahead and saying whatever. And even Sigourney Weaver said at one point that the only reason she did the movie is because they backed up a truckload of money to her place. They paid her $11.5 million to do the movie, and this is in 1996. So, as an actress, yeah, good for her. Yeah, getting paid $11.5 million in 1996, and then still being super respectable in that role. The fact that she actually came through and was the best part about that movie, it ended up actually. There's this very cool anecdotal story about there was Janae. There's a scene in the movie, because if you haven't seen Alien Resurrection, which I'm not surprised if you haven't. Her DNA gets combined with alien DNA through her replication process.
And so she makes out with one of them.
Well, oh yeah, that's actually kind of one of the cooler things in the movie. But but anyway, so when she gets cloned, she's actually stronger and she's faster or whatever. So she has this scene where she plays some of the other these derelict crew members in basketball. And there's a scene where she walks away and she throws the ball behind her and it goes through the hoop. And it was done practically. It was done whatever. And so the ironic part is that apparently they did this. She kept on saying, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. They did 70 or something takes, and she kept missing the shot. And so Janae said, I give you one more chance. Through a translator. By the way, Janae could not speak fucking English. So there was a translator on set the entire time. So all of the acting and everything like that was having to go through a translator. And so after 70 takes, he said, I give you one more take or whatever. And apparently she sunk it. And she said it was the third most proud moment that she ever had as an actor. So she sunk it on that last take, like take 73 or whatever it was. They spent a whole day trying to fucking sink her throw the basketball behind it and sink it. Anyways, as an aside, it's a great, I think it's a great cautionary tale for somebody, especially from a Hollywood standpoint, where it's just like, this person obviously has vision. They obviously have a really great idea. And then you take a great writer like Joss Whedon and you say, they have this great idea. And we've got this great actress. And let's mash them all together and see how it works.
And sometimes that can pay off.
Maybe.
It depends on how strong each side of those things are. Just as a quick aside, your anecdote brought something that I read this week. I happened to read this week with David Harbour, who's in Stranger Things as Hopper, talking about, it was in a thing where he was talking with Kyle MacLachlan about the weirdest or worst direction he's ever received. And it brought to mind what you were talking about. He said David Harbour was in Brokeback Mountain, directed by Ang Lee. And he said he got the weirdest piece of direction from it. And he goes, Ang Lee would always speak in these very broken English metaphorical things. And he's like, and Harbour's take on it is it's not even remotely close. He's he does it, but he does it for effect. He speaks English just fine. That was his during the whole thing. But he came up to it. Because he's shooting this one scene with Jake Gyllenhaal, And like Ang Lee watches the monitor, and he runs up to him after a take. And he's like, "Good," and runs back to the monitor. And they do like another take, and this is like 3 or 4 times, like, "Good," runs back, and then the next time, like he goes back to the monitor. He's back there for a long time. Then he runs up to him, and he goes, "More handsome," and runs back to the monitor, and he goes, "More handsome." And Harper's like, I eventually sort of understood what he meant, but I was also, my first reaction was like, you need to talk to your casting director because I have no control over this whatsoever. But it's like, I understood eventually that he was just kind of being silly about it. But I do like that, how those language barriers can kind of translate into interesting sort of directions on set.
Yeah. I mean, actually, another anecdotal story from the Alien Resurrection set is apparently, I forgot the name of the actor that he always uses.
Dan Hedaya?
No. That Junet always uses.
Oh, yeah.
All of his movies, but he's and at one point he, like an elevator opens and I think it's going to be an alien and it's him in a wheelchair and he's like, who you think it was going to be? Santa Claus or whatever. But apparently originally the line was supposed to be, who do you think it was going to be? The Easter Bunny? But he's a French actor and couldn't say Easter Bunny without the accent coming out. So for some reason, they just changed it randomly in like the 10th take to Santa Claus. So yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, and I mean it's and that's again another really good one. And like I said, I didn't have when I kept trying to look at actresses. So the closest I have to this one for you from an actress standpoint is, it's not a cheat, but it's someone that's not really known necessarily for being an actress. But some of my biggest disappointments in
Sofia
cinema.
Coppola?
No. I was not going to go that route. Listen, I did the same thing you did where I started stacking it, especially because you used heroes. And I was like, oh my God, my heroes. So I'm looking at Kate Blanchett and Kate Winslet, and I'm like, and I'm picking through their filmography, and I'm going, I really can't.
Exactly. You kind of have
can't
to go
be
outside
shitty to these things. Like I can't.
Tom
see
Cruise, probably not my favorite actor of all time. Sigourney Weaver, probably not my favorite actress of all time. And Junet, I love, but is not my favorite director of all time.
Easily harder than actors for me. Like I really felt that there were that most of the times I couldn't pick on a lot of their acting because it was either a role that was underwritten or that like there was nothing they could do with it better than they did with it.
Sure. I couldn't go Gary Oldman Lost in Space because
no.
I mean,
and
he did Mr. Smith as well as you possibly could.
And I went on Oldman. I thought I tried on Oldman a little bit, but no. From the actress standpoint, so I have one of my bigger disappointments in general things, and it's probably where I have 2 that are competing for director from right now. They're same as your rules. They're smaller directors, smaller filmographies, so that the things that really, really don't work really stand out. Yeah. But when it comes to comedy is one of the most painful things to see fall apart on screen, especially for people that you respect, that you know are funny, that you know are capable of good things. When you watch comedy fail, especially in a movie theater in front of a crowd of people that are just not laughing and it sucks the energy out of the room, it's the worst. And that's unfortunately happened multiple times for me with Tina Fey in her movie roles. Sure. And I'm looking at Date Night and Baby Mama in particular. Those 2 movies. Sisters, on the other hand, I think came around the bend. But also the other part with like looking at Baby Mama and Date Night is it's Tina Fey and Carell in Date Night, and it's Tina Fey and Amy Poehler in Baby Mama. And you're watching these.
It should work.
There should be better written jokes there for them to perform because it's their own stuff. And that always makes me feel just uncomfortable because I'm like, I know that these people do amazing work.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Sometimes they just can't find, especially in a movie format. It seems to be sometimes they're better either writing movies for not their own characters, or they're better for writing for TV, which they do insanely well on a regular basis.
Sure.
But that one hit me there. And then on the director's side, it was between 2 directors. And I thought originally about going the Kevin Smith route. And then I've always, and Kevin Smith movies are not amazing movies in general, but I remember going to see Cop Out and just feeling it was dead on arrival, just so terrible. But there's a worse one. This one hit me hard. I watched this movie with you, by the way, at a preview screening. Year One, directed by Harold Ramis, starring Michael Cera and Jack Black.
Unfortunately.
And it broke my heart. It was a movie that literally, Harold Ramis is so great. He passed away a few years after that with, I don't think, directing any other movies. He directed some amazing TV after that. It is a painfully unfunny movie.
From the director of fucking Caddyshack.
Groundhog Day was always.
Groundhog Day.
I think that I always feel that Ramis at his best was what happened in Groundhog Day, and it was so depressing to me to watch 100%. This amazing talent and amazing comedic actors all over that movie too.
Yep.
It's a bad script. I think that it's these two guys that were writing for The Office at the time they were being tapped, I believe, to do a new Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
and after that movie, it destroyed it. Whatever happened with that, but it's always, and that's kind of where I feel where you were going with a little bit of this. It's such a gut punch to watch something that the people behind it are so much better, and at some point during that, and I'm always curious. I think if I were ever to hang out with an actor or a director or an actress, someone that was involved in a movie, one-on-one, outside of like an interview, because they can never say it on an interview.
Right.
Some of them get close, but I want to talk to them about at what point do you realize the movie you're making is bad? Because I don't think I've read plenty of scripts that I've thought were fine, and then you see the end result and you go, "Oh no, it didn't." And it's not that the direction was bad; it was that the script was not great. Yeah. It is a much harder when people ask, like, "How could they have done? They made this movie." I'm like, dude, you do not know when you read that script.
You're seeing something different in your head.
Well, and that's why it leads to so many famous people turning down scripts, and people go, well, why did Will Smith turn down The Matrix? Why did
didn't get it?
Yeah. Why did Sean Connery turn down Lord of the Rings? Like, these are movies that they looked at and they go, they're reading hundreds and hundreds of scripts with their assistants and their managers and stuff. And people are like, this movie is weird. We don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Don't do this movie. And most of the time they're right. Sometimes they're wrong on either side of it, and you don't really know.
A couple times that they're wrong, and those are the times that pop out in the filmography, unfortunately.
And it's kind of amazing. But no one can really ever know until really, I imagine there's got to be a point during production where you're just like, oh shit.
Yeah, this is
I'm in a bad movie. But you don't. And I get it. I've done it on stage where I've fought against it for a while. Like, no, this is fine. We're just learning the show. We're going to get there. And then you're like, no.
Yeah, I still remember apparently like at one point after No Country for Old Men came out that Javier Bardem and Josh Brolin, who were two actors that had been in a lot of movies up to that point, but nothing that was really like, besides Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
Sure.
Woody Allen.
Barcelona.
But anyways, apparently they were like on this festival circuit and they kept running into each other because they were in this same movie together, but they only had one scene together. So they weren't really together very much when they're filming. They were just like, isn't it weird to be in a movie that people like? So, yeah. That's fine.
I guess I mean, so okay, I did a little better than I thought I might have fared. I mean, I had like
save all of your notes.
My notes are because really, I labeled this podcast "Wasted Talent" was the title I came up with for it. So a lot of my shit was just a list of like, here are good actors in bad movies or in badly miscast in things, and there are a million of them. I really felt we were going to get. I for a second, especially in the actress side, I thought we were going to get stuck in the Crystal Skull tornado once again. But yeah, I mean, there's also just some actors that I like. I think it happens a lot with character actors. And I consider this person, even though they are a movie star, a character actor. But Russell Crowe is one of those actors that has some amazing feats of strength in his filmography, and then some just immense failures because they're swinging too hard. But I want to close on one thing. The only thing I wrote down originally for this podcast,
Sure.
the first thought that popped in my head is that and I think you can answer this question. So I'm going to ask this to you. If there were a Lifetime Achievement Award for great actor, bad performance, history, who would be the Lifetime Achievement Award recipient?
That's a good one.
And I have a sound clip to go in with your answer should you answer correctly.
I play your sound clip.
Okay.
Because I don't think
I think you're going to know. I think you're going to know.
What is that? What is that? What is it? Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast!
Cage, come on.
Nicolas Cage is the Nicolas Cage is the lifetime.
Nicolas Cage. I thought you were. See, I was going outside of Nicolas Cage.
No.
for that.
That's what I'm saying. He's the Lifetime Achievement. He is so great and so bad so equally that he is the
That's
lifetime.
true. I guess
He
you're
is the
right. You're
Lifetime
right.
Achievement Award of literally the yin and yang, right down the middle. That he has exactly as many
Yeah, you're right.
terrible over the top performances as he does great
You're right,
performances.
you're right,
That's,
you're right.
That's my guess. But yeah, that was that. And the other clips I pulled were just bad acting clips to determine that like I didn't know what I was talking about. Like, oh, obviously Ben wanted to hear this clip from Hulk Hogan.
What's that smell?
Oh shit!
That is from the powerhouse No Holds Barred,
Yes.
of course.
Dude,
Which I will say, Hulk Hogan was a fantastic performer. It was easily the one he was phoning it in the most.
nice.
Literally where I thought I was going to go with this whole podcast.
What a great way to end the podcast. So, anyways, guys, it's been a
great.
fun time.
We've got we want to tease just a little bit. We are this is episode 96 that you're listening to. That means we are fastly approaching our 100th episode, and we have some amazing things in store.
But we're not
for our
going
100th.
to tell you about that
You
yet.
know, listen, if you know us, if you're subscribing and sharing this with your friends, we might give you a couple of tidbits. But maybe we'll let you call in on our momentous occasion. We don't know yet.
We'll see.
But we have a lot of great things coming up. We got a few episodes to get to before that. But our 100th is going to probably close out our summer run. So hopefully you're enjoying the show. I know we have some new listeners out there, some old listeners out there. It's exciting to have all of you there. Listen, if you want to call in, please tell us. Email us, send us a text, send us an Instagram DM, slide into those DMs as the childrens are saying right now. Just do it. We want to talk to you, and we can make it fun and lucrative. Not money-wise, but Ben does some things.
Okay.
He knows some things.
Okay.
So thank you so much for listening to the New Wave Podcast, and we'll be back again with another episode soon. Cheers.
Cheers.